Mørk Bøje was published in 2020 by Free League Publishing. It was designed by Pelle Nilsson and illustrated by Yuan Nua. Free League Publishing provided this and a handful of expansions, which I'll talk about in What Do I Think, in exchange for an honest review. Two more people roleplay through a dark and twisted world, risking their lives trying to survive a hopeless existence. The back cover calls these rules light and heavy everything else. If familiar with games like D&D, you may be shocked by how few rules there are. The first 14 pages provide lore. Pages 18 through 28 explain character creation. Pages 29 and 31 cover combat. Pages 33 through 37 show various tables. Pages 39 through 71 are optional rules. At the back, Raw Black Sludge, an introductory adventure, takes up a little over a dozen pages. The inner covers are references, including an index in the back cover. There's a ribbon bookmark that we keep on page 29 in case we need a combat reminder. Want your character to do something? Say it. If the GM thinks failure would be interesting, they'll have you roll d20 modified by the action's relevant ability. Difficulty ratings, DR, range from 6 to 18. 6 is easy and 18 is next to impossible. In combat, roll a d6 to see who goes first. Agility is added for individual or to break ties in a group. Use strength for melee attacks, presence for range attacks, and agility when defending. Page 29 gives rules for critical hits, natural 20, and fumbles, natural 1. You're broken if you hit 0 hit points. Roll d4 to see what horrible thing happens. You die if you have negative health. Many characters start with very little health, meaning death is frequent. To break it down, live out the remainder of your worthless life in the shadow of the Dark Fort. All hail the basilisks. That's Mørk Bøje. Being an RPG, Mørk Bøje can take many hours across 1 or more days, or everyone could die quickly and painfully. You could always run a time scenario to squeeze a game into a shorter session. Because you don't need a table, plus players could use apps to roll dice, you're not tied to a table like with a board game. They'll play on the living room floor with their friends over Discord. Despite the theme, you could tweak things to play with young gamers. A trapped creature needs to be healed and kept safe until it can go off on its own again, for example. I'll talk more about this later in my review. My dad had heard of Mørk Bøje, but I don't think I knew of it before seeing it at Free League's table at Shucks 2022. As soon as I saw those covers, I was hooked. Flipping through, I thought, this is the coolest thing. Those not into dark twisted stuff probably won't connect with this. I like that the rules are approachable enough for me to run. As you know, I can handle some of the heaviest board games, but running an RPG takes a lot of effort and energy. If creative, anyone can run this. If not, find a pre-made adventure with enough detail and you'll still be fine. This is easy to run Magical Kitty Save the Day and maybe even No Thank You Evil, and quest links. With that said, there is a downside to the incredible aesthetic. This isn't the best rulebook for finding specific details. Yes, there is an index, but it's not as informative as your typical textbook like rules. This is where the GM screen comes in. I honestly think the screen and rules should be bundled together. As simple as the game is, I mentioned people coming from more complicated systems might be thrown off. When we first played, some of us were like, do we roll for blank? And the answer was always nope, just blank. The screen reinforces the simplicity so you can just jump right in. Thanks to half the book being lore, not to mention Raw Black Sludge, there's enough lore and story here to be able to generate your own adventures for the group. As with many, if not all of Free League's games, there are plenty of free and paid resources online. We've used a handful of them already, such as the fan-made Dungeonscapes. Raw Black Sludge is a good opening adventure. Corrupted rulers, evil creatures, torture rooms, all the off-putting things that make this game great. You have a bit of combat, some puzzles to solve, and even ways for the GM to split the party. They're easier to kill that way. I keep coming back to the layout, but why are the rules for rolling your abilities and health at the back of the character creation, especially since some of the equipment at the start rely on them? On the other hand, as we've done in our games, you can keep Scumbrother saved on your phone and just generate a character there with the push of a button. It gives backstory, personality, weapons, and possibly even a familiar. In one of our games, my character had a hawk. Do not play this if you like RPGs where a character grows godlike in power. In this game, you can be hit by a rock and be killed. When me and Dad were working on these notes, that was an example I thought of. By coincidence, a week later, Mom's character couldn't see across the sludge through the haze, so she threw a rock she tipped off the wall to test if the haze was dangerous. She critically failed and launched it at the back of my head. I fell into the sludge and burned to death. Do play this if you want a system that works for role players with and without experience, including kids. I sent family facts that you could change the theme and story easily and still use the simple mechanisms. The checks and modifiers are easy and intuitive to adapt quickly. Despite its simplicity, running this while capturing the theme can be a challenge if you're not twisted stuff. You open the door and see a prison cell. Maybe prisoners were tortured here. It isn't as cool as soon as you open the door, you immediately choke as the stench of death fills your nose and mouth. You sense the unmistakable taste of metal, but are unsure if it's from inhaling flakes from centuries-old cuffs or from the fresh blood that is pooled in the room. Merc Boyet is a rules-light RPG set in a violent and an unholy world. Need books of lore to create deep adventures? Need tables of stats and rules to run things smoothly and precisely? This isn't for you. This is for people who don't want to roll dice to bite out the throat of sleeping guard to impress a blasphemous cultist. Norm? A lot of people want like this because of its simplicity and theme, but it's one of my favorite RPG experiences ever. I can't wait to dive in even deeper to see what horrible things this world has to offer. One last thing, others love this enough to keep it going for years. Free League recently released Cyborg, a twist on Cyberpunk. Because I like Cyberpunk 2, I'll be reviewing that soon, and I'm very intrigued to see what it has to offer.